Hey, Danny, so nice to meet you, and thanks so much for being a guest on the Everything Saxophone Podcast.
My pleasure. Good to meet you.
Yeah, so I'm really intrigued by your music. It's kind of a mix of, I mean, there's jazz in there. There's some bluesy elements, but there's also rock. And we're gonna get into your music. We're gonna deep dive into it. We're gonna deep dive into your past, how you started on saxophone. But let's actually start. Let's start from the very beginning with your past. When you started, when did you start on the saxophone or any particular musical instrument?
I started playing saxophone when I was 14.
14, okay.
Yeah, so, just like a lot of people, played a little bit in high school. A little bit unlike other people, I actually had to stop playing saxophone for 3 years, between 18 and 21, because I was drafted to the Israeli infantry. But
Okay.
yeah, but I always knew I want to go back and play saxophone. So the day I got out, I immediately picked it up and started practicing, and I started from zero. And after a year or two of that, 2 years of that, almost, I moved to Chicago and started Marbin, which is the band that I'm in, and I've been touring with for the last decade.
Now I'm curious. Okay, so you grew up in Israel, and what was the I don't know anything about this. What is the music education like there?
Well, it's education in general is very different. So stuff is not through the school after school programs that have nothing to do with the formal education system. So here, most people that will learn saxophone, they have a teacher in school that teaches them, and then they have band in school and stuff of that sort. And in Israel, you don't have any of it. So I just played around with friends that I met, through playing mostly, and had private lessons once a week with a guy that lived a few towns over. I would take the train and a bus to his house, and just it's more like there is no, I guess there is no route that people go in, and I actually think it's a good thing. I like it. I think it's a little bit with over academization of music, if it makes sense, because I I got to audition a lot of people and a lot of musicians, and most of them went to school. I don't have any higher education, basically, by the way, in music. And I got to audition a lot of people, especially bass players and drummers. And the feeling that I got that a lot of people, school kind of stunt their growth in a very specific way. If they get A's, let's say in all their classes, they feel like I'm on top of everything. I'm doing great, but that's basically the minimum that you should get, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't mean that you get an A, then now you're Charlie Parker, right? Everybody knows that. So it's like, but it gives you this kind of false, false feeling of fulfillment. I feel like, and a lot of people, I feel if they didn't have it, you don't. When you don't have it, you don't know where to stop. Like the only thing that you got is the people that you're listening to, and then it's pretty obvious if you're getting there or not getting there, and how much work you have to put in. And when you're doing really well in school, you're like, or compared to other students, and the teacher telling you're doing well, you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. No reason to put way extra effort into it.
That is so interesting. Okay, so I have to dig into this more because you mentioned the word over academization, right? So and what you're let me just kind of recap to make sure I understand this. So what you're saying is you found that with the people that you've auditioned, you've played with all that kind of thing, if they've gone to school, it's how do I want to word this? Through academia, right? Through studying classes and all that kind of stuff, it's not helping people grow as much as they could have if they've just explored on their own, and their music education is being dictated to them by someone else as opposed to possibly themselves.
Yeah, because they just mark it as like mark check, like I've done it. It's like a lot of people that I met, for example, they would say stuff like, "Oh, I know how to play Latin music. I was in Latin ensemble, right?"
I
But
see.
it's like and then in Vermont, it's like, oh, I no more needs to explore into more Latin music. But just because you did something a couple of times a week for a year or a semester, doesn't mean that you know it. It's actually it's preposterous to think that you're done with something that's so deep and has so many layers. And that's just how it feels a lot of times. Schools, in my estimation, prepare people for a world that was only from talking to other saxophone players and musicians that I got to know that are a little bit older than me. I'm 35. So, people in the 40s and 50s, they used to have a short period of time especially in New York, where there was a lot of work in a lot of styles of music. And you got the work mostly by playing in jam sessions, and everybody used to go. Like now that I go to jam sessions, there is almost nobody there, and definitely nobody out of. I used to go in Chicago, and you would see nobody of like top of the scene players. Like they would never come out and play. So it used to be like the thing that you would go out to jam sessions, and you have to learn how to play, a little bit of bebop and a little bit of hard bop and a little bit of post bop and some R&B and some funk, and that's how you get work, by putting on all this situation. But in today's world, well, even pre-COVID, right? Obviously with COVID, but even pre-COVID, there's just not that much work. Like if you're a saxophone player, it's not like you work and make tons of money because you're playing in New York, and you don't get work by playing really in jam sessions anymore. So I think school just prepare you to do a little bit, like be okay at a lot of things, but it's not the world anymore.
It's not and you know what, I think also too, I think it also depends on the school that you go to. Like I tend to think that a place like Berkeley and Berkeley from the past, Berkeley now, all that kind of thing, I would tend to think they're a little bit more practical in terms of what's out there in the world now, where I know a lot of people that they've gone to school, colleges, and all that kind of stuff, and they felt like they were not prepared for the real world, because the college world is just so different. Although the interesting thing, though, is that I found that college music education has gotten so much better over the past probably decade or so, and there are more schools that are preparing people for more the music business side. Not as many as people would like, but from what I'm gathering from what you're saying and with your experience for people, it's they're not getting the real world playing experience. It's more like a college taught, like controlled type of experience.
Yeah, again, it's not like every school is bad, and it's like I think a lot of for a lot of people it's a great time, and I think that also sometimes you just get the right teachers, which is also makes the experience great for you, for a specific person, right? If you just click with the teacher and get the person that you need to get.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying completely bad, but I'm saying it has a good, obviously everything has a good side and a bad side. There's price for everything. And it's just, you need to know, if you come into something with eyes open, I feel like you can get the most out of it. But like our guitarist, for example, his girlfriend at the time when he graduated, she also went to Berkeley, and she was a singer-songwriter. And she was $250,000 in debt when she left Berkeley.
Yeah.
And you can't start a music career when you're that much in debt. It's impossible. You will not. It's like, I don't know if I could do it now if I wasn't that much debt. Like I have a mortgage, and my mortgage is like way less than that. I couldn't afford a house that's expensive, and I'm again over a decade into my music career. It's like if you just got out of school and you have such a huge burden on you, it's difficult. That's what I'm saying, right? Because you don't. Some people immediately, people pick them up, they fall into the industry in a way that they think they're going to make money. Like Esperanza Spalding, for example. Right. I heard that from people from Berkeley, that the second semester in Berkeley, she was already on all the, how do you call them? All the signs, all the billboards in town. And she was playing with all the teachers, and, she's a great player and great, and great singer, and she's definitely very talented, and she also, obviously can make money, and which she did. So she started and she went, from 0 to 100 in a second, 0 to 60. But for most people, I think it takes a while. It's a long process. So
It
I'm not saying to people don't go to school. I'm just saying, just think about what you're getting. Think about, what you're giving, and make the best decision, I guess, on your individual options.
Yeah, and I think too, you mentioned that the teacher, that you would be studying with. I think that's a huge, huge component of that, in the sense that if you find a teacher that you connect with, that, also may have connections to help you get started, networking connections and stuff like that. I think that's going to be really, really huge. And just the fact that, what can you get out of school, as opposed to, approaching the school as, what is it going to give me? That's really what it is, in order to get your supposed money's worth, but also, having to think beyond school. But let me go back to when you first started. So I find it really interesting. So there was no band or anything in schools. That was all after school, if you
No,
chose it.
but no, they don't have something like that. They don't have any clubs. They don't have, again, I wasn't here in school, so it's hard for me. I only know about American school from a little bit from my wife, that grew up here, and then from and friends, and from TV and movies. So we don't have any clubs or any things like that. It's like school is much shorter. Um, we just spend a few hours a day and just studying basically the core math, English. I'm trying to think what else, history, like stuff like that. And then there's no extra.
Wow, wow. Okay, so then how did you even know about, like, what made you decide to choose saxophone? If you know what I'm saying? Like, if there was no experience like in schools and stuff like that, how did you know about, oh, I want to play saxophone? What inspired you?
My brother used to play piano. He's a computer engineer now, but he used to play piano and was really into it. So he would play me music, and I think he really liked a lot of saxophone players, and he would push it on me, kind of like playing me a lot of those people. And I would listen a lot to Charlie Parker and Dexter Gordon and Coltrane and all those people. So when it came time to play, I just took the saxophone,
Right, and then
which I like.
you found, yeah, right, and then you found a teacher. You're smart enough to find a teacher to help you out.
Yeah, I got some recommendations, and I tried a couple, and I found one that I connected with, and went to his house every week. And I don't know, it was good. I just got into it immediately. It's like I couldn't put it down. So, and I'm still, all these years later, I'm still very interested about saxophone, even if I'm not playing. I have a baby and a wife, and I have a lot of stuff to do in the world. But I still think about it every day, all day, even if I don't get to play as much as maybe I used to or I want to.
Right, right, right. Well, and now, we're everybody, we're filming this during COVID, not the very beginning of COVID, like what, 9 months into COVID. So, we're definitely going to be talking about that. And you're probably thinking about it a lot now, since it's not easy to go out and get gigs or anything like that right now. But let me go back to, so you did military service, and then you came back to the saxophone. So can you talk about that journey? What was that like for you? You said you were starting from ground zero again.
Yeah, that was difficult because I could barely get a sound out. Like, I played for 4 years in high school, and then I stopped, and for 3 years. So
Yeah.
it was frustrating. I still have theoretic base, and I knew what I want to do. And I just had the schedule that I would wake up at 7 every morning, give myself half an hour for breakfast, then play an hour for lunch, play half an hour for dinner, and then play a few more hours. So I would
Wow.
play everything from every day from 7:30 to between 10 and 11, and just practice technique. And again, took it slowly, and it took a while. And it's not like I was good when I was done, but I was getting better, and working it, and did that for until I felt like, okay, I can go and try and play a little bit and move to the States, and I feel kind of ready. And I don't know I feel like that, if you listen to me play, we have 8 albums out for Marbin, and then I got this new album out, which we're probably gonna also do under Marbin, but it's really more like a solo album, Russian Dolls. And if you listen to the albums one after the other, or even like a song or two from each one, you can hear how much my playing changed in those years. And and I think it's interesting. Like, a lot of musicians, they get, I think back in the day, they start recording their solo albums in their 30s after they're already kind of formed as musicians, as players. So on one hand, you don't get to see them improve it much, but on the other hand, it's like we're pretty much killer from the beginning. And with me, I think you can notice like some technical stuff that was a little bit, got a little bit better, and some maybe subdivision and some rhythmical stuff, and a lot of stuff that was added to my player. But it's the core thing that stays with you through the years. But if you're into saxophone, and I think it's interesting.
All right, so I'm curious. You talk about like an easy setup or something like that. I'm curious. So what are your setups? You say you play tenor and soprano. So let's start with the soprano. What's your setup on that?
I play Theo Wani, mouthpiece Gaia 2, number 7, and Fredrik Hemke, also number 2. So number 2 reeds,
Cool.
Which I really like. And then for tenor, I Shiva the Destroyer, number 7. Also, number
7.
6, I think.
Okay.
I think number 6, and the Rico Jazz Reserve unfiled too hard. So 2H.
Got it. Okay.
So pretty easy setups.
Okay, what do you? Okay, maybe it's just a terminology thing. Like easy. When you mean easy, like not the reeds aren't as stiff. They're not as stiff. They're not as strong as like maybe some people play 3s or 4s or something like that.
Yeah, like I don't need to exert a lot of energy in order to make the saxophone make a sound.
Right. Got it. Okay. And what about your horns that you're playing? What brands?
It's called Dr. Sax, and it's by a guy in Israel that makes them. His name is Gidi Oren, and I like his horns a lot. I think it's really, I like the sound.
I'm gonna ask
you.
They're
very comfortable.
I'm going to ask you to email me and give me that information so I could put it in the show notes. I'm sure people are going to be interested. I've never heard of those horns before, so that's why I was curious about that. You sound great. I mean, the videos that I've seen, you sound really, really great. And I definitely hear the Israeli music influence in your playing, which is really intriguing. So in terms of, we were talking about how you approach the horn, your 3 questions, and so like the how is like the sound, right? So it's your tonal conception. You spoke about the people that have influenced you, when you're growing up. It was Dexter Gordon, Charlie Parker, that kind of thing, but also Sidney Bechet, Johnny Hodges, and you're not just listening to the vibrato. You're listening to how they produce the sound, and in a sense, what maybe even the types of. Again, Theo Wani wasn't there back then, but, like the types of, equipment that they may have used in order to get these sounds.
Yeah, it's interesting because also a lot of us people, when you hear modern saxophone players, like, it doesn't matter. Modern saxophone players, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, like what kind of reverb they play, what kind of mics they use. But when you listen to the old guys, there is not that much masking the sound, so you can't just excuse yourself and be like, well, I can't make that sound because I don't have that $10,000 mic. But Louis Armstrong didn't have a $10,000 mic, so it's an interesting thing to listen to those people, and again I love old jazz. I think it's great, and it's so interesting. And I know I play a lot and I play differently, but as far as listener goes, the sound and articulation and all that stuff is one of the most interesting things to me about music and about playing and about players. And that's something that I think got a little bit lost along the way when people are just focusing specifically, they don't even focus on rhythm in my estimation. They focus on like playing fast or shredding or burning, and then on like harmony, what to play over what, and they kind of leave the sound, like they're trying to get a good sound, but they don't really play with a lot of vibrato, definitely not a lot of different vibrato, not a lot of different articulations, Jeff Coffin is different as far as modern players of this kind of stuff. He does a lot of stuff with sound, and as a listener, I appreciate it. So I try to do it in my playing as well.
Well, what would be like one exercise or even two or whatever that you do every day to work on your sound?
I actually don't. I'm not a believer of doing exercises every day,
Oh,
and I can explain too.
yeah, yeah.
So to me, when you start playing, right, or when you start learning anything, you're in complete chaos, which means you don't know what you're doing, and you're in unfamiliar territory, and everything that you do is you're learning something new. But after a while, it's not the it's a good place to be in the beginning, but after a while you kind of get sick of this place. It's not a fun place to be. And then a lot of people, to me, it's like they do, to do daily exercises. It's kind of a way that you can feel like you're practicing, but every day you do it, you're actually more in the order realm and less in the chaos realm. Right? So if I play, let's say I play a Charlie Parker solo, and I play it every day. The first day I play it, I can barely, well, let's say back in the day, I can barely go through the, you get through it. It's like some phrases are hard for you technically or for me technically, and then some rhythms are, strange to play, and you're not used to them, and some parts of the instrument, the horn, you don't know as well. So that's the first day. And when you keep playing it, you can zoom in more into his articulation, into the volumes, into dynamics, everything that's going on in there. But you know and understand more and more about it every day that you keep going. So you actually get a little bit less out of it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And people need to be able to put themselves always in places where they don't know. You always have to go to be like 1 foot in, grounded in what you know, right? And 1 foot were in chaos in place that's completely new for you. So the reason why you have to do it basically to find that balance is that if you just start playing saxophone, let's say last week, there is no reason for you to try and learn like a Michael Brecker solo that's completely shredded. It's going to take you years to learn it, and it's not like you could take it and use it, right? It's
Right.
way beyond you. So so you need to do something that on one hand you kind of understand. Let's say you know the notes, so you're like, oh, but you don't know the scales. You don't have it under your fingers. So like you start learning the scales, and when you get that, you're like, okay, maybe I learn how to do patterns and sequences on them. When you learn how to use them in some musical situations, right? So you always have to put yourself in a place where you don't know. And I think after, especially for different people, it's different time, but I noticed from students that usually after 2-3 years, and definitely once people get to college, like people are like 19 and 20, they kind of don't like to be in the place where they don't know anymore. They don't like to be in this insecure place where they sound bad and they don't know what they're doing, and it's complete chaos. So, if you want to get better, I would say, since you have only a limited time a day, I would say just try and push yourself to the unknown and not stay and just and go and do over your what you usually do.
Okay, now here's the thing though with that. I want to unpack that a little bit because you mentioned like let's say someone starts saxophone a week ago. It wouldn't be the best choice to pick a Michael Brecker solo to figure out or even a Charlie Parker solo. But then on the same token, you're saying, you do want to step into the unknown, as Lauren Sevion said in a recent interview that I had with her, and this is my mantra too, actually, be comfortable in the uncomfortable. You want to make yourself uncomfortable so that you get better. So, how would, and maybe this goes back to you did start with a private teacher. Did that teacher help you to, did you read music at the same time that you were playing, or did you develop your ears? Because I think this would lead into my next series of questions in terms of what you would recommend for people.
I would do both. There are advantages to both. So reading is good because, again, I'm not talking about like the professional life. I'm talking about your artistic journey. So reading is good because you can go over a lot of solos and maybe see stuff that people do all the time, and you can analyze it a little bit better, and you can kind of figure things out more quickly and see, take a step back from something and see the way it is. That's a good thing for reading. Or for example, if you're working on soloing over changes, it can be great if you just go over a real book and play like 50 songs a day, right? That you just going over it. So that's great for reading. On the other hand, there is also something of knowing something, knowing something in depth. So, and when I play shows, I never read. I always learn it. So even if I play, doesn't matter if I play gypsy jazz, if I play swing, bop, Marbin material, I always learn the songs and learn them by heart. I never read on stage.
Right. Okay. So then, in terms of when you coming back from the military, right? You said you started from ground zero. Give us an idea, like, what were some of the types of things that you were doing in all those hours that you were playing? You mentioned technique, that kind of thing. What were some of the things that you were doing?
Okay, so the main thing that I was doing in the beginning was I needed to get some technical facility, and I want to work on something that will translate into improvising later. So the way I look at harmony, I don't want to get too technical. Can I just say something about music theory, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so music theory is not a scientific theory. Scientific theory is something that can be disproven, right? So music theory is not that, because if I tell you can't play C sharp on C major 7, you're like, well, here, I played it, right? So you can't disprove something. Music theory really should be called music language, which you have the world of sound, and you use language to describe those sounds and put it into categories. So let me give an analogy. So let's say you have a library and you have infinite number of books, doesn't matter, like say 10,000 books. You can arrange them by date when they came out, by name of author, by weight, by number of letters, number of words. There are infinite ways to organize those books, right? And each way you organize it would be good for something else. So if you organize them by weight, and I'm asking you which books came out between 1935 and 1936, it will be hard for you to find them.
Yeah.
And it's the same with music theory. So music theory is not this one scientific thing that you know. It's like it's a language, it's a way to organize sound, right? And some people have tools that fit one thing and better, and some people have tools that fit a different thing better, right? So when I'm gonna say something, let's say, about what I view as music theory, I don't want to get again into it too much, into harmony, but it's my way to organize sound in a way that I think is the best tool for me as an improviser over multiple styles, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, and especially with your music, it definitely is multiple styles in there. All right, cool. No, that's good. So got the theory, let's say, out of the way for a second. But I'm still trying to get into though, like, like.
No, I'll tell you the thing that I would practice then. Okay.
Yeah, that's what
so I view music basically theory as like you have 7 scales. Okay. I don't want to get why and how, but you have 7 scales, which is the major, the melodic minor, harmonic minor, harmonic major, diminished, whole tone, and augmented. So, which is like tone and a half, half, tone and a half, half. So those 7 scales are basically what we use in all modern music, from really in all of jazz between, let's say, 1900 to 1980. Okay, basically, and then after, it depends on what you're playing. But so I would go and I would play permutations. I would just choose, let's say, 4 notes and give it like numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would play them from beginning to end of a horn. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would change it to 1, 2, 4, 3. 1, 3, 2, 4. 1, 3, 4, 2. 2, 1, 3, 4. Right? And I will just go through all the scales and all the, and I'll transpose like C major, C sharp, D flat major, D, and so on, and just do that. And then keep going, and then do 4 different notes and do the 24 permutations you got on that one. And that's really was my main thing that I worked on every day, just to technically be able to move on the saxophone and to have it relate to have harmonic tools I'm going to use later when improvising.
That's really cool. Yeah, that was the specifics I was looking for. That, and I think people are going to find that really valuable, and that keeps it fresh. When you think about it, that keeps it fresh all the time. You're constantly, thinking of a different permutation and working that through. And I think, especially now during COVID, where, a lot of people are thinking, oh, I've got so much time to practice, but a lot of people are not motivated to practice because there's no, the gigs that they had before are not happening right now. So I think that's a great motivational tool to use.
And again, important thing. So even with that thing, right? So I would do it. I did it for a while. I think it's like after 7, 8 months. In the beginning, it took me forever. So that's another thing about practicing. I'm going to give people a tip. If you want to get better at technique, anything technical, and technique for me really is the ability to do something in time. Because if I can't do something in time, I can't use it. Okay, so the ability to do something in time. Anything that has to do with technique, you have to practice perfectly always, right? So it's not a computer game. You don't do it 5 times wrong, 1 time right, and you're like, oh, I moved to the next level. You have to do it right every single time. So how do you do it? You slow it down. So the way I would do, in the beginning, I had to slow down, do it like, I don't know, like 60 BPM and do like whole notes, right? And then after a while, I started picking it up. It became easier. I would do, I could just move through, through the tempos with the metronome. So after it became less of a challenge and I felt like I'm not getting as much out of it, I stopped doing it and moved to do something else. So just again, like something else. You always have to be on the pulse to make sure that your practicing routine is not kind of meditation and more like something that again you'd feel uncomfortable with, and like you said, and that can get you better. And it's not easy always to find out what would get you better, right? You have to think a lot about your playing and to think about what is good.
Yeah, and we alluded to it before. And I'm going to ask this question now then, since we're talking about rhythm. So a lot of times I feel like you're playing in polyrhythms, with your solo lines, but even with the songs that you're creating and you're writing and stuff like that. So let's talk about your approach to I guess your approach to soloing, but also I guess songwriting too, because a bunch of your songs, I can hear the cultural influence without a doubt, and it's kind of like Israeli music meets rock and roll, meets blues, meets jazz. It's like all these different things.
Yeah, I think with a lot of modern artists, it's weird to pretend that we grew up just listening to one type of music, because I was born in '85, and yeah, I grew up listening to a ton of jazz, but I also grew up listening to Rage Against the Machine and Chili Peppers and Paul Simon and Leonard Cohen and then Israeli music. So I don't really think about style that much. And tango, I don't think about style that much when I'm writing or when I'm playing. I do something that I like, and that kind of like the mix of my influences. And I think a lot of modern jazz artists, Esperanza, we said before, she's a good example, or Snarky Puppy, a good example. And a lot of us, a lot of people right now, they just take everything that they know and they grew up with and kind of put it into their own personal music.
Definitely, and I could definitely hear that. And so let's talk about your writing. When did you first start writing your own songs?
Immediately, actually.
Oh,
So if
cool.
you listen to the new album, the Russian Dolls, that is coming out November 6th, then the reason why I called it Russian Dolls is something that my wife is a writer, and something that she wrote about how a lot of times it feels like when you think about yourself in the past, it doesn't feel like it's a continuation between like you and as a 14-year-old and 17-year-old and 20, and it just feels like different people inside of you. If that makes sense, like Russian dolls inside of each other. And
Wow.
this album is songs that are, some of them I wrote when I was 16, and some of them when I was 20, and some of them when I was 29, and one of them I think I even wrote last year. So that's why I called it Russian dolls, because it's like basically different screenshots in time.
That's a really cool analogy.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the songs then. So on the album, which was the songs, what was the song that you wrote it like when you were 16?
Actually, even 15, the minor blues, Years That Answer, and the major blues. So I wrote that one. Like it's very simple. It's like so, and then I added this intro that I did. I wrote it a few years later, but but it was interesting to go back to it. I never get to play like minor blues now, or regular jazz blues. So it was kind of actually fun to see, how my development kind of fits in that in more traditional style.
Yeah,
So
because in listening to some of your tunes from some of your other albums, it's yeah, it's not blues. You know what I mean? It's definitely it's to me like rock music comes to mind, and you're putting jazz elements in there. So that must have been really cool for you, in producing and creating this album, and just again looking back and seeing, wow, this is where I was at this age. Oh, and then I was here at this age, and you know what I mean? That must have been really cool.
yeah, it's very interesting. That's another thing with me though, that I love recorded music, and most of my favorite artists, I didn't get to see live, but as a musician, yeah, I played like maybe 2,000 shows in the last decade, maybe more. And it's like, to me, it's really about playing live and about the journey. And this kind of music, improvised music, it's really about just playing it for people at the day of, and you don't really get that also in recording. Recording is more like kind of like a summary, but I always try to do things that I'm, again, uncomfortable with, to see, so I can learn from them later, if that makes sense. So I always feel like once I'm done with an album, I will do it much better like a few weeks later, because I get to listen to it and think about it. Yeah, it was very interesting to do, and it's gave me a lot to think about, and I'm still thinking about it, and a lot of it stuff, and obsessing about every little thing, and thinking about, well, what I want to do with my playing, because you have to think in a lot of different levels about how you build the solos, and about what you do and what you don't do, and sometimes it's hard to notice things you don't do, right? It's easier to notice what you do and don't do,
Yeah.
and oh, it's very interesting, but yeah. If you want, I can talk a little bit about you rhythmically, because rhythm is a huge part of my playing, and I use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I noticed that right away, right away. And I'm wondering too, I'm thinking this is also part of the cultural influence as well, because, like here in America with Western music, we're mostly feeling 4/4 time or four beats in a measure. It's usually not compound meters. It's usually like, eighth notes, right? Duple meters, not too much triple meter. But when you get to like some European countries and also Israel, and there's a lot more complex meters, that we are not exposed to.
Yes, but actually in Israeli music that I listen to, it's mostly simple. It's a
Oh,
lot of it
really?
is,
Okay.
yeah, because a lot of it is influenced by Eastern European folk and classical music.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so Israeli folk actually is very interesting harmonically. There's a lot of stuff going on harmonically, because it's very influenced from more classical music and modern classical music. So it's they have a lot of stuff there, like a lot of information compared to like American folk, for example, um, which I also really like, by the way. But yeah, so rhythmically, actually, my system that I use is the Indian system, is Solkatu. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so what they do is they take a pulse, right? And everything has a pulse. Pulse is not really BPM. Pulse is where you feel the music. So if you have a song like Cherokee, for example, da 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 da. So the tempo is ta 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 ta.
That's right.
But you don't want to feel it though, because you're gonna have a heart attack, and you can't keep it. You want to feel it da 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 da.
Okay.
Okay, so you have a pulse, and when the pulse, you can subdivide it. Subdivide it means cutting it into equal parts. So if I have 1, 2, I can do ta, 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 ka, ta, ka, ta, ki, ta ka de mi, ta di ki na tun, ta ki ta, ta ki ta, ta ki ta, ta ka de mi, ta ki ta, ta ka de mi, ta ki ta, ta ka de mi, 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 ta ki ta, 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 ta ki ta. Right, so 1 to 9. And then there is a lot to go. So every beat you can divide 1 to 9 basically, and you can do it on 2 beats, 2 or 3 beats or whatever. And then on top of it, there is something called grouping, which, let's say, I'll give just a simple example so people will get it. Let's say I have the speed of 2, but I divide it to groupings of 3. So speed of 2 is, let's say, ta, 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 and I divide to 3. Ta, ki, ta, ta, ki, ta, ta, ki, ta, ta, ki, ta, right? And then that has a lot of implication, and it's really can get complicated. So let's say I take a measure of 30-second notes, right? So let's say it's like takademi 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 takademi, yeah, takademi 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 ta, right? Like a metal drummer,
Right.
right? But let's say instead of that I do 7-7-7, because 32 you can divide not just to 4, you can do like 7-7-7 5-6. So you do, let's say, takademi takta, takademi takita, takademi takita, danikidan takita, takita tam. Right?
That's awesome.
It sounds completely different.
Yeah.
Right? So in rhythm, it's like there is so much to do. And once you play a little bit, you realize, how different rhythms sound over different grooves. And what feels like you're pulling against the music, what makes it feel like you're playing the groove itself, and the tension and release you have rhythmically, and how to play with it. So that's something I'm trying to always be aware of in my playing.
I hear it. No, I hear it in your playing, and I was just thinking about that as you were talking about grouping. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what he does. That's exactly what you do. When you're soloing, even da da da. Yeah, even like like that slowing down where you're playing a 2 over a 3. Yeah, I definitely hear that in your playing. Absolutely.
Yeah, to me, so it's funny to me because harmonically, I know people gonna disagree and gonna jump at the phone, but harmonically to me there is not that much. Like I'm not very interested in harmonic. Like there are a lot of harmonic tools, right? But I like to play in the song. Like I don't really play out. Like I have techniques that I play out, like like half steps, like we do with bebop scales. I don't look at it bebop scales, but let's say half steps and all those techniques that you can play a little bit out. But I don't really play out compared to modern players. I really play the songs, and because to me every song is different, and I want to just play the harmonic language that fits the song and the style. Okay, so I look at that's basically the way I look at harmony. So every song has the options that I feel like fit that song, if that makes sense. So I don't feel like there is that much to play with it. Like I don't, like if I play all of me, I'm gonna play, Ionian on the first one, and then it goes to the 3/7. I'm gonna play a harmonic minor 5 below, right? So there are options that fit. Like you can't really you can do altered on the second chord, but it's not gonna sound good in the styling for the song. So I play the song harmonically, and then really where I get to play and to explore is rhythmically and sonically.
Yeah,
so,
no, talk sonically for a second, because this is really interesting, because okay, I know exactly what you're saying. A lot of people, may get bored with what they're doing, so they're trying to stretch it harmonically. They're trying to put different types of substitutions in there.
Yeah. Overimpose harmony, stuff like that.
Right. You're kind of approaching it, I'm just going to take the harmony that's there, right? This is what was intended. I may do some neighboring notes and all that kind of stuff, enclosures, that kind of thing, but I want to stretch it rhythmically, okay, that's really cool. Not many people talk about that, but you mentioned sonically, so talk about that a little bit.
So sonically is what I said with, different type of staccato, for example. Right?
Okay.
And I play, so that's another thing. If you listen to my playing, you can hear that I tongue a tone. Like I tongue almost all the time. And the reason why I do it is because I like, it makes the rhythm sounds really much crispier. If it makes sense. Especially when you play fast, and play busy, like I'm a busy player. If you can notice difference between players that I look at basically at the tongue in like a right hand of a guitar player. Right? So some guitar players pick a lot, and some players just play legato. And when you play legato, even if you play super in time, let's say like somebody like Alan Holdsworth, that plays really in time, but plays a lot of legato, it's like it sounds kind of like it's floating over the music, the lines. And when you pick a lot, people like maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan, then you really sound like you're playing the time and you're playing the groove, right? Like it makes it like this accurate kind of feeling to the music. So that's one thing that I can say I do a lot, no matter what I play. It's something that kind of stuck to me. And then on top of it, again, I'm very interested in sound. So I always try to find little things that make the saxophone sounds a little bit different and a little bit, like sometimes even like if I have a note, like I would choke it a little bit, And some people will be like, oh, that's kind of a mistake. But to me, it's like, I like it. It's like that's the thing that gives drama to the music, So I always try to be very aware that I'm not just playing the saxophone like it's a MIDI instrument, like it's a MIDI controller. Like I'm just pressing the note and every note needs to come out perfectly in the same way. I'm trying to give it more drama in the way I play.
More expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever heard Derek Brown? Have you ever heard
Yeah,
him?
of course.
Yeah, okay.
I stole something from him. I have a song called Escape from Heavy Mountain, and I started with on our 6th album, I think, on Goatman and Last of the Dead. Escape from Heavy Mountain, if you want to check. And I do an intro, it's like to patu.
Cool.
I
Okay.
got from him. Yeah, he's great. I really like him. He's one of the modern players that I really like the best.
Derek is great. He's a nice guy too, and he's very humble. And he's just, as soon as you said exploring different ways of, creating different types of sounds and expression, that's the first thing that popped in my head, because that's what he's been doing all along. And that's really cool. And you guys are around the same area. You live around the same area for the most part too. So the colder part of the country. But so, okay, this is really cool. So we've dug into, the sonically, right? Articulation, sound, expression. We've dug into rhythms. Now, what about when you compose? Can you talk about, your process? Like, do the harmonies come to you first? Do the melodies come to you first? What happens?
It's usually the melody. Like I would look for a melody and then find the harmony that kind of works with it. But sometimes I would listen to a song and be like, oh, I like this harmonic device, I'm going to use it. But if I can give people advice, because stealing in composing, it's like everybody does it and it's fine, but do not steal a beginning of a song and put it in the beginning of your song. That's the one law. You cannot do that, because that sounds like it's stolen. So if you steal something, put it somewhere in the middle where nobody can notice.
That's awesome. That's a quotable. That's awesome. So you're admitting that you stole.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, listen to a lot of music. If I hear something that I like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the harmonies. So in speaking to that, like the harmonies and stuff, you had mentioned also that even with like the music you were listening to when you were in Israel, it was more like you said, like the simpler music, but the harmonies were different. How were they different?
So one thing that I would say that's very different than in what I'm doing harmonically than a lot of jazz musicians is that the harmony that I use is very, it's not like it doesn't change tonality, but I don't have a lot of 2/5s in my music.
I see. Okay.
So it's like it's a lot of movements, like let's say one of the songs here, I'll just give an example for harmony that I'm playing. So it's like D minor, and then it stays on D. So D minor, and then the bass stays on D, and it's E7 over D. And then it goes to G minor, and back to D minor, then D diminished.
Oh, interesting.
So into A minor, or like G sharp diminished, really. So into A minor, to B flat 7. So, it's like to E7. So it's, it's like that kind of harmony you can again find in tango, you can find like again in classical music. And so it's E7 chords. I don't really do I don't do classical cadences and stuff, but I try to do, again, tonal interesting harmony, but that's tonal.
Yeah, I've got to ask this question because one of the thoughts when I was listening to your music, people used to say about me that I soloed like a guitar player when I played some of the stuff that I played back in New York. I feel like you solo like a guitar player too.
Maybe in some ways. I would, it's like, well, when I play fusion for sure, right? So that's kind of when I play in Marbin, it's Markovitch, which is me, and Rabin, so Marbin.
That's where it comes from. Okay, got it.
That's the guitarist. So we're very influenced by each other. So I would get when I play like a guitar player, and he will get what he plays like a saxophone player. So we're really influencing each other. We're on stage, we used to be on stage almost every day until COVID. And when COVID hit too, we were on the road, actually.
Oh, wow.
And just things were canceled. We were driving, we played a show in beginning of March in Cincinnati, Columbus, I think, Knoxville, Tennessee. And that was our last show. We drove to play Columbia, South Carolina, and we got there and they canceled our show. And then everything got canceled and we drove all the way from Columbia I drove to Milwaukee the same day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that took a while from Columbia, South Carolina to Milwaukee, if you want to check it out. But it wasn't the most fun day. But so yeah, I try to take whatever I can from anybody. And like I said, with the picking, it's like I would hear Dani Rabin, and I would hear him play, and that's how I kind of thought about it, about tonguing, like picking, right? So I would say in that sense, because I would, like a lot of time I would play, and I feel like my playing would sound a little bit too, like maybe not avant-garde, but like, maybe a little bit avant-garde. And I was trying to figure out what it is about it, and then I figured out that the tonguing thing, it's the rhythms. It's not really what I play, it's how I play it.
Yes, absolutely. And let's talk about your partnership with your guitar player, right? So you guys met in, I think you mentioned in like 2007 or 2008?
We met in 2007.
Where did you meet?
In Israel.
Okay.
So we had a friend called Elad Muscatel. He was a bassist. He lived in New York at the time. He's back in Israel now. And he was on vacation in Israel, and Danny came for vacation in Israel with an American drummer that he knew. And I was just out of the army, started to play again. And the guy introduced us, and me and Danny just clicked immediately. We had a show after we met, and we just decided that we're going to play together, and we're going to move together to Chicago.
Wow.
And just, start our journey. And when we did that, and it took us a few years, but in 2011, we started touring full time, basically. But even before that, we would play all the time, all over Chicago. Nobody would come see us, but we would when we would play like a few times a week. We had a few constant gigs, like every other Wednesday here, every first Monday here, every Thursday there. So, we'd be playing all the time.
Let me ask you this question, and I can relate to this too, because there was when I was in New York, there was a guitar player, Brian, incredible guitar player, and he's still playing, which is awesome. But there was you click with people, right? We talk about clicking. What for you? Like what made it click? Like, how did you know?
Our taste in music was very similar. That was one thing. And then the second thing, Danny was the first person I really met that was into practicing his instrument as much as I was, as much or more even, as much as I was practicing into my instrument. And he was really not happy with where he was. He was very good. He was after Berkeley, but he was really not happy, and he was just working it all the time. And that's, what I do too. So we were on many levels, we were just connected. Got it.
And then it just grows over time, it just grows over time. And with, to the point where, you're probably completing each other's thoughts, on stage, right? You could probably read each other's minds, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. The two of us, we actually started a podcast a few weeks ago called Music Real Talk with Marbin that I was supposed to plug, so that's a good time for it. Okay. Music Real Talk with Marbin, and the two of us, if you put the two of us together, we basically can talk forever. Like we would never end, and anybody in the room will not get a word in. Because we just know when one stops, the other one starts, and it's just never ending. Which is it's the same way that we play, so it makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. But again, I love the way you guys play and the interplay between the both of you. Do you guys, okay, so when you're writing your music today, right? Do you write together, or do you come up with you come up with your own material and then you bring it to the group and then they add to it?
So it depends. We sometimes start something together, or sometimes start together. Sometimes one of us would start something, and a lot of times we just won't have the patience to finish it on our own. So I would start something and be like, oh, that's good. Let's just finish it together, and then we'll just finish it together. But a lot of stuff we start together, and that's another thing that changed. So we really became a live band. So we really, the way we do stuff very differently than our bands. So we only play original music. And then on top of it, when you come see us play, every time, we tour all over the States, right? And every time come see us play, like every time we come to back to a city, we will have a complete new set of music. Mm. And we don't play what's on our albums. It's the other way around. We play for a set for, let's say, for a year and a half. And then we record it. And then we immediately write a new set of music and tour with that.
Interesting. Well, what if people want to, what if people have requests and stuff and they want to hear stuff from the other albums?
Well, sometimes somebody other requests, we will do it in the encore.
Okay, got it.
But but we decided that it's better for us, and at the end, it's also better for for the audience if they like. We feel like, yeah, if you hear all our hits when you come, hits, fusion. But if you hear our songs that everybody know, then yeah, they would enjoy the show, but they won't really have a reason to come to the next show. And with our stuff, it's always you always get something new. And on top of it, a big part of our show is every song title we have, not on Russian Dolls, but on the other album, is a crazy story that happened to us on the road. Right? So everything like Fisticuffs, Escape from Hippie Mountain, whatever it is, Aggressive Hippies, everything, it's a road story. So Danny would tell road stories, like 2 or 3 road stories in every show, and then everybody also knows we're gonna hear new stories about the new songs.
That's cool. That's funny. And actually, let me backtrack a little bit. So you only play original music, but when you guys first started out in 2011, was that the case too, or did you?
Yes.
Oh, really? Wow.
Immediately. Well, when we met in 2007, we had a show after we met, so we played some, some like Pat Metheny songs or Scofield songs or stuff like that. But very quickly we just wrote songs and just played that. So only original music.
Okay, now, so this is kind of music businessy, so to speak. But all right, so you went out, let's say, started to play all original music. That must have been tough to build a fan base right away.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
well, the way we started is we played this dive bar. I booked it on MySpace. So I sent MySpace messages to everybody in Illinois, and this one guy named John Brown wrote me that he has a place. If we want to come, he's going to pay us like, I don't know, $300 or whatever. And I looked it on the map, and it was 5.5 hours away, which is more than driving all of Israel, right, from one end to the other.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, okay, let's do it. And we went, and we got to this tiny town in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, southern Illinois, called Marion, which is, it's like they still have a video store, like not VHS, but like DVD store, if you can understand. And we have a pizza shop, and that's it.
Wow.
And we went to a dive bar that looks, the same or worse as the dive bar you have down the block or under your house. And we played there, and it was amazing. We sold like, I don't know, like 20, 30 CDs, which was like, for us back in the day, was like, oh my God, it is a lot. And everybody was so into it. And we were like, oh, you know what? There must be a place like that in every town in America. And we just started playing those dive bars, and sometimes coffee shops, and sometimes restaurants, just for crazy fusion, like blasting everybody everywhere we went. And we just went everywhere in the States, just playing tiny towns, tiny bars, and built our following like that, like slowly, but sure, and gradually. But it took us until 2000, that was in 2011, and it took us until 2015 to transition completely to play ticketed shows and, festivals and stuff like that. So it took a while, but we built it slowly, but it happened. You play, and more people hear about you, and they buy your album, and they get into you, and they tell some of their friends, and it's a slow, daunting process. But also, on the other hand, I got to play music for 3-4 hours a night.
Right.
And it was even more than that, because we played 3-4 hours a night, because we played like 3-4 sets. And then we actually, to conclude that period, we did an album called, well, almost to conclude, we did a third set, which is why, because we played at least 3 sets a night. And we always drinking at the time. And we were like, the third set is the sloppy set and the fun set. So we called this third set and did like a live record on tour. We brought somebody to record every show for like 10 shows, and we took a song from each show in the Midwest. And most of those places don't exist anymore, unfortunately. And like the towns exist, not the venues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where I was going with that. So I got to play a few hours every night, and then during the day, because we barely made any money, but we had to pay everybody and to pay expenses, we would play jazz, like acoustic gypsy jazz on the street to make money. So we'd play hours every day on the street, and then go and play at night.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's really interesting. And I'm just curious though, when you first started booking Marbin, right? What did you, a lot of times venue owners will say, well, what kind of style music do you play? what did you say, first of all? And
Jazz rock.
jazz rock. Okay, okay, because the other thing too is that, I guess depending on the area of the country too, in some places, like that, what genre, that style of music, wouldn't fly. You know what I mean? Like if you started in the
No,
South, yeah, no?
no, no. Everywhere is the same. We actually the South was where we went to the most, honestly.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, interesting.
and it's like people everywhere are the same here. They have the same internet, same TV shows, same same radio. And for like you would go in the middle of Mississippi and play a dive bar for two people, and then after the show, you'd be like, "Hey, you remind me of my Vishnu," you know, and or weather report or whatever. And it's just people are people, and if you like play something good, and the people that really gave us our first chance, and we still are not really like we're not in downbeat, for example, or jazzes, or we're not into like I know some of the people. I don't want to I don't want to say bad things about them because I know some of the people that write for them, and I know some of the owners, the editors. But we're not really in the jazz, except in the jazz scene really. Like now we do jazz festival and stuff, but we were never like a scene kind of band. But like just regular people that have a bar or like I have country covers every other day of the week, every other weekend of the year. Why not give that sounds cool? Let's do it. That's just how we got our start. And now it's a little bit easier because we have fans and we sell tickets, and we don't even need guarantees. We'll just do a ticket door deal, and we get to play everywhere. But back in the day, it was just people being like, oh, I don't know what it is. This is kind of cool. Let's do it.
That's great. And actually that is really great advice for people. Yes, I know we're in COVID, I get it. But the gigs will come back. You have to be positive about that. They will come back, and this is going to give people some more ideas. So okay, you mentioned like jazz rock, all that type of thing. So you started to build your fan base, right? Hopefully you were collecting emails and all that kind of thing.
You know what? We started to, and then we stopped after a while when our Facebook page started picking up, and now Facebook changed the algorithm, and we can barely reach anybody. That was a huge mistake. Always get emails.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. So, but you said to me like you have over 230,000 followers. That was like last year.
Yeah.
So this your followers came from all these little gigs that you play, these dive bar gigs all over the
That
country.
was that was like the first 15,000 basically, what we got on Facebook, and then we had those videos in a time where Facebook still showed stuff, and they really pushed it. And then when it's really started happening to us, like with other people, and we got way more people in shows, and it's really like we blew up, so to speak. You know.
Yeah. So then let me ask you this question. Okay, so Facebook, yes, it's changing the algorithms. It's making it more difficult. I mean, even these changes in terms of like Facebook Lives. They don't want right. They don't want you doing all these long Facebook Lives with recorded music and stuff. How are you dealing with that now?
Well, it's just, let's say last year when we would do a live feed, we would get like 20, 30,000 viewers. And now we sometimes get 400, right? So they really changed it. Or like our post, like we would put a video and even a reshare would get like 30, 40,000. And now it's sometimes get like hundreds or like 120. So it just doesn't show it to anybody. So it's tough. But we still use it to promote our shows, which is still good for, because I can advertise like we're coming to town, to people that live in the area. And, we started Bandcamp in 2018. So at least that kind of gave us like a few thousand emails, and just trying to adapt and see where it takes us. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just happening now.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. Have you ever explored using Stage It? I've known about Stage It for a long time.
No,
Okay.
what is it? I don't.
Okay, good. All right. So I've known about this for a long time. Annie DeFranco, who was an indie singer-songwriter
Yeah, I
upstate.
know.
Okay, yeah, it's upstate New York. So she was one of those people that just became really successful. No record label. She did it all on her own. She created her own record label, and she'd do these types of things. She would do house shows. Even Michelle Malone in Decatur, Georgia, house shows, a lot of house shows and stuff like that. But Annie DeFranco would do Stage It, and Stage It is essentially it's online shows, and you can have people pay what they want. So it's ticketed. so people could pay as little as $1, which is, a little bit insulting. But they could also they could pay $30, they could pay 50, they could, do whatever. It's high quality. A lot of people, since COVID started to look it up and started to do it. I know one of my favorite players, Michael Linkton, and I interviewed him for the podcast. He's such a great player, and he's definitely taken advantage of using Stage It. So, he's got a great audience there, captive audience. You could, sell tickets, all that kind of thing. People are doing it weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever. So I'll let you know about that when we're done. Yeah, so Stage It, it's a really great resource. It's been around for a while. It's reliable. A lot of big name people have used it and now are using it. I think it would be really great for you guys.
Thank you. So it's actually, you mentioned about that people can pay what they want, right? And that kind of reminded me of I think a change that happened in the music industry that people should be aware of. The model used to be related more to scalability, which means to get as many people as you can and get a little bit of money from a lot of people. But it's really changed now because most people will not drop money on you. We have I don't know, 300,000 followers on Facebook. Most of them will never put money on us. I know it. And some of those people can be on a live feed every day and can be, listen to our music, and still it's music is not something that they pay for unless maybe you go to their town. So when I looked at our Bandcamp, for example, I found out that, we have a few thousand people from 2010 that bought our albums. And I found out that it's the minority of the people gave them most of the money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's your super fans, the people that you're really connected to are going to give you all that money. So what you really want to do, you want to make sure that you give them the opportunity to give you that money, which means you have to sell stuff. Don't sell stuff for $2, like you said, people say just give $1, because most people, the people that want to help you will give more. They're going to be good. They will pay $15 a ticket, $20 a ticket. They will, they would pay because they understand that you, as an artist, that's the only way you survive, and they're happy to be a part of what you're doing. And again, that's the only reason why we survived was for people that, individual people that like our music and support us. So, it's very different. We used to sell in 1999, we sold 940 million albums. In 2019, we sold 40 million albums, right? So 900 million albums less. So it's not the business anymore. The business now is to find the people that really love your type of music and give them something of value that they would want, but that will also, give you the money that it's worth back. If that makes sense.
Give them an experience. Really,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Give them experience.
So give them, if a show or a record or when you print shirts, for example, our shirts are a little bit more expensive, but they're very nice, right? It's we pay extra for nice shirts, and our people, they appreciate it. So it's better to do stuff that's nice and worth it and put your time and money into things and charge more than just to try and do something as cheap as you can and then also charge less. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so your album's going to be dropping, right? November 6th, I think you said?
Yes.
Yes. So that's going to be out for you. And where can people, number one, find you, find the album, buy the album? Give us all your links.
So everything, including, we have even a free sample album of Song of Each album. I've over the new one on Marbin Music, M-A-R-B, like boy, I-N like Nancy, marbinmusic.bandcamp.com. All of our stuff is on Bandcamp. The new album, at least for now, is going to be only available there, and it's not streaming anywhere either. So it's the only place you can get it, that at least for the next few months. And if you get it on the day, on November 6th, on the day it comes out, we actually are getting all the money. So Bandcamp are not taking a cut on that day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you want to support, that's the best way and the best time to do it. November 6th, marbinmusic.bandcamp.com.
Excellent. Okay. And in terms of your regular website, in terms of Facebook, are you on Instagram, those types of things?
We're on Instagram. We don't use it much, but we are facebook.com/Marbin Music. I have my Danny Markovitch on my own Facebook like profile. You can add me, but I don't really post a lot well. Only if you want to chat. And marbinmusic.com, and that has all the links well too.
And people, and also, yeah, speaking of contacting, so on your website, marbinmusic.com, do you have an email list? Do you have a newsletter or something?
Yes, there's a place to sign up for the mailing list. And again, also we have, again, not to forget the podcast, which is Music Real Talk with Marbin, which we just started.
Yes, and so I'm going to ask you to send me that stuff. I'm going to put the links in the description for this particular podcast. Listen, Danny, thank you so much. We spent a lot of time here together, and I appreciate that. I find your music really cool. I love that blend. It's so interesting to me. Thank you again for reaching out and contacting me.
Oh, thank you for having me.